Hey everybody, and welcome to the most serious show in clean energy, This Week in Cleantech. If you haven't heard of it by now, it's a roundup we do once a week with the biggest stories that you need to know about affecting climate and clean energy in 15 minutes or less. My name is Paul Gerke. I'm content director of Factor This. That's Mike Casey, Tigercomm commentator extraordinaire. We have a special guest on the horn too on this Friday, May 2nd, 2025. Her name is Molly Taft from Wired. Maybe you've heard of her. Way cooler than the two of us. She'll get to talking in just a minute, but first, some pleasantries. Mike Casey, how are we?
Did you know that I'm actually Paul Gerke with a Mike Casey Mission
I hear
Impossible
the
mask on?
masks are really good these days. It would
Dude,
be tough to tell. It's the
we-
voice that's going to be tough to imitate. You're
the
going to have
mate.
to rely on AI for that.
All right. So anyway, first off,
Yeah, anyway, where are you, by the way?
I,
You're in a hotel somewhere?
I
A roadside Motel 8?
greetings from Worcester, Ohio, the home
Okay.
of the College of Worcester Fighting Scots women's lacrosse team. We have our daughter is now a finalist in their conference with a chance to go to the NCAA
Heck
championships.
yeah, great news.
Absolutely, they played great, and I'm going to say just it is crazy how much news we did not get to pick this week. I'm just going to rattle
Yeah.
off check this out: the Ukraine-U.S. mineral deal,
Yep.
the House voting to repeal California's decision to ban internal combustion engine cars.
Okay, I
Slate,
missed that one too. Whoops. Okay, two.
Slate Auto, Bezos' new EV pickup truck that can become an SUV,
Yep.
advancing in deep sea mining, and Tesla looking for a new CEO. Oh, no, they weren't. But it's just
Elmo doesn't like that. Elmo does not like it when you say that because it sounds like he didn't know that that's what was going on. I
but I'm
wouldn't
just
like it either, but
But I'm just it's seriously I think what's really hard, it's getting hard about this show is there's so much news to pick from. We got to pick
yeah.
five stories, but anyway, it's really cool, and
Hey,
we'll take it
Mike,
from
it's
there.
better this way than it is the other way, right? Like, you go through periods of like you're stretching, looking for stuff. Like when I first started in the energy space, it's like you're looking for press releases that don't necessarily pertain to big heavy hitting topics like we touch on every week on the show. It's a small community. We talk about it often, Mike, and these folks, these are big issues for a small community. I'm glad that we can even highlight five of them. Although, if you want to do it this week in Clean Tech, that's 45 minutes long. You might have to chain Brian Mendez to his chair to make that happen, but I think we could pull it off. Anyway, before we get started, one quick shout out. The listeners, the people on the other end of this
Yes.
horn, wherever you are, whether you're watching the video of Mike Casey unplugging his headset from his computer or just listening to the dead silence that it created on the back end, we appreciate you. And if you want to be a part of the show, contact us, email us, send us stories, paul.gerke@clarionevents.com. Mike, our first story of the week.
Number one, Jennifer Hiller, Catherine Blunt from the Wall Street Journal. U.S. needs more power for AI, but critical equipment is pricey and scarce. Paul Gerke.
This alarm is cranking. So
Yes.
data centers, they could use 9%, 10%, 15% of US electricity by 2030, depending on which metric you look at, depending on who you believe, but reliably probably close to double digits, I think we can safely say. But the financing decisions for renewable energy projects are sort of being put on hold in a lot of places as investors and developers shake out this tariff nonsense and this 90-day purgatory that we're seemingly trapped in right now. That could really change the scope of these projects. Mike, I was talking to a CEO this past week who said that the tariff actions on China alone, to his bottom line, and this is not a huge company, would mean $3 to $4 million per month. That is
Oh,
unsustainable. It is
oh,
business crushing. It is job killing. That's all I have to say about that. One more thing on this note before I turn it over to you for your thoughts on story number one. The wait time right now for everything that isn't solar, we're talking about large transformer equipment, gas turbines, 3 years plus. And that's 3 years probably if you were already in line. It's probably longer for
yep.
most other people.
So I got to say I've been to two recent industry CEO summits because, as you know, Paul Gerke, I travel up where the air is rare,
You do.
and there are. But if you go to these things, the people who count trends for a living, they all say the same thing. The only way you can win the AI race is through solar plus storage.
Mhm.
And I fear, however, that the gas industry is running the tables on the narrative that they're the only ones at the adult table who can handle this challenge.
Our second story, Max Foster from CNN Business, called Video Underwater Windmills Could Revolutionize Our Energy Systems. We like to keep it under the sea like Ariel and the Little Mermaid friends, Mike Casey. We were talking about some deep sea stuff last week. What's new with this one?
I am grooving on this story because it harkens back to the days of This Week in Clean Tech when we had lots of cool tech to talk about, and John Engel would get all cranky because he doesn't like new technology.
Yeah.
But Nova Innovation is one of the UK's leading tidal energy companies. The UK sits on the Atlantic Ocean continental shelf, exposing it to 50% of Europe's tidal resources. The tide runs like clockwork, it's predictable. And in 2016, the company built the world's first offshore tidal array in the Shetland Islands with three 100 kilowatt turbines, each with enough power for 60 homes. So their next array is going to be 5x that, a 4 megawatt system. I think, yes, this is small, but I think it's very cool and super promising because there's a lot of places in the world where
Hmm.
ocean currents are strong and predictable. Paul.
Wave energy, tidal energy. This is a
Yeah.
grossly undertapped space, and I actually echo your very specific sentiments about John Engel crapping on technology like this, because I did when we launched our rebrand, when we went from Renewable Energy World and Power Engineering and Hydro Review to Factor This, which is what we brand ourselves as now. The very first feature that I wrote was a profile of CEO of Eco Wave Power in a Braverman, talking about her story. She survived Chernobyl, as funny as it is. Well,
Whoa.
not funny, but interesting as it is in the career that she's had afterwards. And that technology to me was totally foreign, and it's still very small scale, but it's taking on. They just did one in Israel, the first one linked to the grid. They just are setting up one in the port of Los Angeles right now. This is coming to the US, this technology. And the amount of energy that we can generate just with the old motion of the ocean, as Mike Casey likes to say, is incredible. And we really should be tapping into this. The UK has about 130 megawatts of tidal capacity set to be deployed by 2029. They're the world leader in this space, but like you said, Mike, there's a lot of places where this could work.
I love how you credit me with such poetry when I did not originate it, but I'm going to take the credit for that, friend. All right. Third story by the remarkable Jael Holzman. She was out in Seattle, got to hang with her. She's from Heatmap, and she writes how a carbon pipeline is turning Iowa against wind, Paul.
Well, I just tried to say that like Barry White, by the way. Motion of the ocean. I don't
Well,
know. Is that a Barry White lyric? Because it should be if it isn't.
we need to stick to clean tech business, not to culture, because both of us suck at it. Like, that's
That's true,
just
but I think that's probably funny for whoever's listening to this. Anyway, so we're talking about Iowa, right? Back out in corn country. They produce a lot of electricity from wind power, if you didn't know that. They got a lot of open space for land, a lot of open farm space for large solar and wind projects. There's been bipartisan support for clean energy out there dating back to the 1980s. But now counties are starting to push back. Some 20 of Iowa's 99 counties have passed rules that limit or stop solar, wind, or battery projects from being developed. A lot of these counties first passed carbon pipeline moratoriums in response to the proposed Summit Carbon Solutions carbon pipeline. That crossed 5 states, including Iowa, and raised issues during the 2020 presidential primary, if you can remember back that far. Mike, what did you think of this?
so. I spend a disclosure. I spend probably half my day job hours on this problem, and I can tell you, it's crucial in this era of low trust that we meet rural Americans where they are. And there's no getting around that this country has had a long and proud tradition of local control and checks and balances at different levels of government. So it makes for a messier process, and yet it is the process that we must face. If we don't put steel on the ground in rural America, there is no energy transition. And as a past This Week in Clean Tech guest, Elizabeth Weiss of USA Today had told us back in March of 2024, at that time, 15% of all U.S. counties had passed bans on renewable energy. So it is imperative that this industry communicate with rural Americans in a way that shows that what we can contribute to them is commensurate with rural values and keeping agriculture as part of the fabric of their community. Paul, our fourth story.
Yeah, one thing before we get to the fourth, I think that that speaks volumes, Mike, to the agrivoltaics efforts that a lot of companies are efforting, whether it's Doral or Enel or a lot of the developers that are finding ways to work around. R Plus is doing it out west. I could go on and on that are finding ways to take these farming communities and one, developing relationships with the people that own the land over these transmission lines, but two, ensuring that that land is cultivated and cared for in a way that it can be returned in good shape back to families and
Yes.
developing that trust you spoke of, Mike. I like the way you phrased that. We are in a low trust or no trust world, and the ways that we can develop trust, especially in those spaces in a time of dire need for power, is critically important. Story number four. It's from Matt Simon from Grist. We republish Grist all the time on Factor This. They do some great journalism.
They
This
do.
one was actually one of the articles that we took. Farmers are making bank harvesting a new crop, solar energy. This speaks to what we were just talking about, Mike.
Absolutely. Okay. Farmers, especially in California's Central Valley, are turning their land into solar farms. A new study looked at nearly 4,000 hectares in California Central Valley. It showed the consequences of converting cropland to solar projects. On average, farmers earned around $124,000 per hectare per year. That's 25 times more than growing crops.
Wow.
Here's the good news. It means that these family farmers can stay on their land and keep other parts of their land in production instead of going under or having to sell. It's particularly important now that you're looking at a tariff disrupted global agricultural industry. Here's the other thing that the Central Valley has had real problems from years of drought. Solar projects do not require this irrigation, which has
Hmm.
been so intensive that you've actually seen parts of the Central Valley sink because of so much groundwater pumping. It's a way to restore aquifers. It's a way to level out the water demands. And you're talking about powering up to 500,000 homes. So it's Central Valley is kind of ground zero for this. It's a deal for solar because it's flat and it's sunny and it helps farm families stay on the land. Paul?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about this, Mike, that I didn't say in my last little diatribe about the importance of agrivoltaics and about returning the land to the farmers and caring for it in the way that they would respect. The other problem, though, Mike, the other side of this equation that we haven't talked about is that it seems like clean energy policy in California is going the wrong direction, at least on the consumer side lately. They just slashed the amount that farmers can get from selling electricity back to the grid by about 75%. Really destroys the dynamics of that, much like the NEM stuff we were talking about not that long ago about residential solar in California and how that stuff is handled. Frustrating to say the least. You may have noticed that there's a new face in the chat. We got a
Wow.
story number five. Our last one. Mike, talk about it. What do we
Yeah,
got?
and I just want to say, were you
Yeah,
imputing
please.
Governor Gavin Newsom for kowtowing to in-state utilities to fund his presidential aspirations at the state at the expense of solar homeowners?
Wait, hold on. You mean Gavin Newsom, the guy
Did
who's
you
out hunting homeless?
did
That
you
guy?
say that? Did you say?
We're
I just want to know if you said that, Gerke, because you're a
we're
journalist,
making
not
a
a
lot of
reporter.
enemies on this show, Mike.
I'm just
Elmo is going to be mad at us. Gavin Newsom is going to be mad at us
and
now.
and and Molly's like, what the
Yeah,
hell
you
did
guys
I
got a
get
good
myself?
lawyer?
None,
All
actually.
right,
That's the show just disappears. It just goes away. It's great.
Wow.
all right,
Good luck.
Molly
Anyway,
Taft. Molly Taft, a first timer on This Week in Clean Tech. She is from Wired.
Hello.
States and startups are suing the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Molly, we want people to read your story, but if they have not yet, what is the major takeaway?
Yeah, totally. A really interesting lawsuit that's making its way through a district court in Texas. It started in December when Texas, Utah, and one nuclear startup decided to sue the Nuclear Energy Regulatory Commission, which is the main body in the U.S. that makes all the rules for all of our nuclear power plants, saying that the NRC is actually misinterpreting, their claim is the NRC is actually misinterpreting a key piece of U.S. law, and which says that, the NRC should regulate nuclear reactors that pose a national security threat as well as a threat to public health. And what these states and startups are saying is that there are models of nuclear reactors that don't fit inside this purview, and so the NRC shouldn't actually be regulating them. So earlier this month, two more states, another state legislature, and two more startups also joined onto the lawsuit, basically saying like, hey, we're trying to develop these small modular reactors, and the NRC's permitting process is too unwieldy and doesn't apply to us. And I think what's important to note is like everyone I spoke to for this story, even folks who think the lawsuit is a bad idea, say that it is really difficult to get a lot of nuclear models through the NRC. It is a really long permitting process. The U.S. permitting process has historically been like a little bit more combative than other countries where nuclear is really taking off. Like it is a more aggressive process to get your model through. So, but there have been efforts recently at the federal level to make the NRC process friendlier to small modular reactors. There are a couple small modular reactor companies that are working with the NRC right now. Like they are in the process of getting their reactors through. So it's an interesting kind of look at the need between balancing like how to properly regulate this stuff versus some states and some startups that are saying like, hey, we want to do this now. We want to get nuclear on the grid, and we think this is the way to do it.
Molly, it's a delicate dance, it sounds like, between, getting this stuff to scale properly. Because the thing that I hear about nuclear is you got to do a bunch of these for it to be cost efficient. You can't just say Mike Casey's going to do nuclear and nobody else is going to do it, or they're all going to figure out their own way to do it. These have to be scalable and mass producible. In your reporting, how do you feel like this affects that time to market for the folks that really want to get their feet wet in that nuclear space?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting split, and I think it sort of largely falls on whether or not you think that this lawsuit's a good idea. The startups I spoke to, overwhelmingly, you guys are just talking about data centers. A lot of their potential customers are data centers, and they're saying the need is now. And, we know that these things can be safe. We're designing them safely. There's not as much energy in a small modular reactor as in like 3 Mile Island, for instance. So there's less risk. We got a drop off. But I think that those folks would say that, states doing the regulation can help speed these models and get them to market. Other folks might say, actually, creating different standards across states is a bad idea for helping bring these things to market because you're going to get a patchwork of different regulations. Producers might not know which state to go to. Adam Stein from Breakthrough described it as like a parent trying to plan a cross-country road trip with a kid. And, if you've got a kid, you don't know if you're driving through different states. Yeah, well, but if you're driving through different states, there are going to be different laws about when your kid needs to be in a car seat. In some states, it's going to be like as young as 5. They don't need a car seat. In other states, it's going to be 8. So they have different safety standards, and that can be kind of a headache. So there's real questions about efficiency as well as like actual safety procedures.
Molly, big picture question. Do you, from your reporting on this piece, do you get a sense that the economics, the go-to-market economics for small modular nuclear reactors is significantly better and different than old legacy nukes? Like you hear about them all the time. And as someone I'm kind of 2 minds on nukes, I'm really interested in this question, like how much quicker as a power source solution are they?
That's a great question, and I think you'll find a lot of different answers. I think that when you take the example of NuScale, which was the only small modular reactor to be like they got approval from the NRC and they were good to go and they were going to build this power plant and supply energy to their customers, and then these customers got a notification that's like actually we're ratcheting up. I think it was from $59 to $89, like, and it really jumped, and the customers weren't interested anymore. NuScale did spend a lot of time and money on the regulatory process, but nuclear is also like complicated and expensive. There is a guy named Admiral Rickover who was like huge like pioneer in the U.S. industry, nuclear space. He wrote a memo in the early 50s where he was like, there's 2 kinds of nuclear reactors. One is the academic reactor. It is small, it is simple, it's made from prefabricated products, you can make it cheaply and easily, and it only exists on paper. It's in the academic stage. And then he's like, and then there's the practical reactor, which is over schedule, it is too expensive, there are problems cropping up with the design that you didn't even think of, and that's the one that's being built. So like, from the start of when we've been doing this, there's always been this acknowledgement that like what you can do with nuclear energy on paper is like really different from what you can do in reality. And we've made leaps and bounds in technology since then. And there's a lot of really interesting designs out there. But I think that's going to be the question in the next decade is like financially, how is this all going to come together?
Paul, I think we've got to go to our Cleantecher of the week.
Let's do it. Cleantecher of the week. Drum roll, please. I don't know. Did Brian insert the drum roll sound effect
Yes,
last
yes, he
week?
did last time, as well as keeping my goof up.
I
Thank
told
you
him I
very
was
much.
going to check for the drum roll and then I didn't. But then, see, he
He
didn't even have to be
did.
accountable to me. All right, sorry. Recue the drum roll. Okay, thanks. Cleantech of the week is Maddy Mowrey. Congratulations, event specialist at National Grid Renewables, the point person at National Grid's Executive Partner Summit in Nashville last week. Hope you guys partied hardy on Broadway. Congratulations, Maddy. Cleantecher of the week.
Yeah, I was there, and I can tell you that having run one of those events, they are not easy to pull off. It's like the land
Yeah, that's
of
tough, man.
hundreds of little details, and she pulled it off like a champ, so it was really good. Well, we want to thank our usually wonderful producer, Brian Mendez.
Mm.
He won't be wonderful if he sticks in my glitch. I'm just going to tell you, Mr. Mendez. But I do want to thank Alex Peterson, Claire Quinn for pulling together these stories.
Yeah, and to Molly Taft for putting up with us and joining us on This Week in Clean Tech.
And
She was fantastic. Please subscribe, give us some feedback, share story suggestions, interact however you like. I'm not your dad. You can read the articles discussed here. The links are all in this video that you're watching this on. And if you're not watching it on a video, go to Factor This and watch the video because there is an extra comedic component to not just hearing the voices, I promise you. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time.